Trying to catch up on my emails I've missed.
Exactly. Oh, I wouldn't.
Smallest video
Good
contingent
stuff.
I can call for anyone.
Wow.
You're right. Starting to decide to come in person, although I don't see it's going to be a larger crowd.
Melanie, I'm ready. When you All right, do I need to call the meeting to order? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. Shall we do the roll?
Sure. Vice Chair Moyer,
Here.
Director Alba,
Here.
Director Del Bono,
Here.
Director Dune.
Here.
You have a forum.
Great. Will everybody stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining. As I think we all know by now, this is a hybrid meeting, meaning that it is in person. Thank you all for coming in person and on video, so welcome. Chair Wenderman sends his regrets. He was called away for business purposes, so he is doing a great job for all of us who live and work in the Bay. And so in his place, you have me. So it will be a good meeting. With that, I think we are going to jump right in. We welcome public comment. I really encourage all of you to please speak up, especially those of you that have made the effort to join us today. I hope that you will share your perspectives and opinions. We do ask that you indicate that you would like to speak by either raising your hand or putting in a comment. You can send your comments online to boardofdirectors@watertransit.org or just on the Zoom, hit the reactions button for the raising your hand. So with that, we will go to the first item, which is report of the board chair. And since our chair is not here, we'll go to the next one, which is report of directors. So directors, anyone want to start us off? Nothing to report.
Nothing to
Director
report
Alba,
today.
anything? Director Del Bono, anything? No, nothing. Right. Goes to you.
Just to report that Seamus and I attended a meeting yesterday with FTA, and Seamus gave a report.
All right, good. And nothing really from me other than to recognize that the wonderful building next door, the Ferry Building, is marking its 125th anniversary. It's just such an incredible building. I spent a lot of my time in this neighborhood in my career and studying the history of the buildings. You know, even the smidgen of the history of the building is really quite impressive. Its role in the history of our region is incredible. So if you get a chance to do anything today to mark its history, I would really encourage you to take a moment. If you haven't had a chance to even just walk around or walk through the building, it is packed today, and it is remarkable to see just the attendance of the very colorful people who are availing themselves of all that the Ferry Building has to offer. So it reminds me again with great pride what a wonderful place that we live in. So happy birthday to the Ferry Building. So with that, we'll go on to reports of the executive director and staff.
Thank you, Vice Chair Moyer. We have some reports from staff before I dive into those. It is great to see the celebrations happening next door. Obviously, there wouldn't be a ferry building without ferry service. We did everything we could to try and encourage folks to come and celebrate with others at the ferry building. We made fares free for youth today. to try and encourage folks to get out, families to get out and take advantage of all the great youth activities that are happening next door. So it looks like that did the trick because it is very, very packed in the Ferry building. Wanted to also introduce the board and the public to our new operations analyst, Joe Ramey. Raise your hand, Joe. Joe is joining us from the private sector. He worked for an economic consultant in Berkeley and has a lot of really relevant experience in that area. He worked for the National Park Service, supporting the National Park Service in their procurements of some concessions contracts, including the ferry service to Alcatraz and Angel Island, Channel Island, Statue of Liberty. So we're just glad to have Joe on board, helping to support Tim and the operations team. We have 3 active recruitments going on right now for 3 of the 5 positions that were approved by the board as a part of the current fiscal year budget. Our digital communications specialist position is being recruited right now, along with the marine project engineer and an accountant position. So good to see the agency growing and bringing on new folks. We'll talk a little bit later on in the agenda about a HR consultant contract that'll help us do that more effectively in the future. The sea change project, just an update on that. We're making slow but steady progress towards getting that vessel in the water and operating. It was fueled for the first time on June 15th successfully, so that's a major step, major accomplishment. There was some good media coverage of that fueling. There are some technical issues once it was fueled, and we were able to turn it on and see how the fuel cells responded. There were some technical issues that are summarized in the ED report, and those issues are all being addressed. There are specialized consultants that are needed to address some of those issues, and so that is happening right now. I think we're looking at an August launch for the vessel. Those issues need to be worked out, and we still need a couple of weeks at least to go through the COI process with the Coast Guard and get our crews trained to be able to operate that vessel. But we are continuing to make progress on the sea change, and it will be in operation hopefully in August. With that, I want to actually, while I'm at it, why don't I just talk about the state budget before I turn it over to staff to provide some reports in other areas. The state budget with respect to transportation, the governor signed a budget agreement that doesn't have much impact on WETA directly, since we have RM3. We don't have a fiscal cliff that we're up against, but other agencies that were facing a really urgent fiscal cliff dilemma are helped by what was in the state budget. The budget restored $2 billion in TIRCP, Transit Intercity and Capital Rail funding. So $4 billion. What that does for the region is provides major capital projects that are underway that are receiving federal funding don't lose those funds. The TIRCP funds will provide matching funds for BART to San Jose, and also BART core capacity, and also for the Transbay extension of Caltrain to the Transbay Terminal, or the Portal project as it's now called. The budget also included $1.1 billion in flexible funds that can support transit operations, and this is where the fiscal cliff agencies are really helped. That is going to make sure that about $400 million of that $1.1 billion comes to the Bay Area, and that's enough to make sure that transit service over the next 2 years won't be cut for agencies like SFMTA, BART, AC Transit, and Caltrain, who are all facing fiscal cliff issues over the next few years. There's still a little bit more that will be needed. I mean, a little bit is an understatement, a significant amount that will be needed in addition to that $400 million before the region can put a ballot measure before voters in 2026, which is anticipated to include more operations funding to make sure that there's a permanent dedicated source of operating revenue for agencies moving forward. And WETA is actively engaged in that process. With that, I will turn it over to Tom first to provide us with a marketing update.
Good afternoon. Vice Chair Moyer, directors. Just wanted to provide a quick update on 3 ongoing campaigns this summer that we have going. I've mentioned in the past that the strategy we took this summer was to try a couple of different things out and to see where we could make an impact on ridership and awareness. And so we're in the middle of that right now. The first one I want to talk about is our Latino influencer campaign. This was developed and executed by DNA Communications, which we got under contract at the beginning of the calendar year. The real focus was building awareness of ferry service and dispel some notions amongst Latino riders. If you remember from the passenger survey that we completed last summer and presented in December, across all of our routes, Latino riders are fairly underrepresented amongst our riders compared to the communities that we serve. Part of that is lack of information that was offered and done through outreach to Latino communities, not just Spanish speaking, but also bilingual and English speaking Latinos in the region. So this was part of an overall effort through our community outreach contracts with Next Steps Marketing and Interethnica, in addition to our just passenger information efforts, including something as simple as our onboard safety announcements, which forever have been in English. They're now in English and Spanish on board. Little things like that add up to big differences in terms of recognition and awareness. And so the focus for this campaign, and you see some snippets here of some of the content that was created, was really focused on sharing relevant information from trusted, authentic voices, dispelling notions about ferry service. There's still a perception, not just among Latinos in the Bay Area, but amongst a lot of people, that the ferry is the expensive way across the Bay, which it isn't anymore, as you know, thanks to the pandemic recovery program, having lowered fares to comparable to any other transit mode and are cheaper than driving. And so we really wanted to make sure that we communicated reality to audiences. The campaign was a huge success from my vantage point. 1.3 million total impressions across Instagram and TikTok. We actually don't have an agency TikTok account. We stayed back. Most transit agencies have stayed back a little bit with all of the uncertainty about whether people would be allowed to have TikTok in this country. But we were able to work with influencers that have huge TikTok followings and get, in particular, one really viral TikTok from one of the influencers that did 250,000 views in 24 hours when she put it up. And it was all about how amazing the ferry was. So it's a big win for us. A good stroke of luck too. 230,000 engagements. A lot of these were high quality engagements, including comments from people either saying, oh, I didn't know it was less than $5 to ride the ferry. Or people saying, I ride the ferry every day for work. It's amazing. Everyone should do this. So a lot of high quality engagements there. A lot of clicks to the San Francisco Bay Ferry.com website and to our app. We did have a promo code going for each of the 3 influencers that we could track to see, who's using the promo codes. And we were able to give away 525 round trips to people who, potentially tried the ferry for the first time for free, bring a friend with them who the friend doesn't have that promo code, so they're paying, and then the next time they're paying customers as well. So that's a big win for us as well. There was in total 16 organic posts across Instagram and TikTok. And then DNA did some amplification ads based on that content to extend it further. Just for the 16 organic posts, the estimated media value of those posts, were we to go out and procure that many impressions, was about $263,000. That's not how much we spent on the campaign at all. That's 10 times ROI, all inclusive of the entire campaign. So including the amplification costs and the creative services. So a huge win for us, something we're going to learn from and continue to lean into. Second campaign I want to talk about is one that's currently in progress. This was put together by Underground Agency, one of the other firms we contracted with beginning of the calendar year, with some assistance from Next Steps Marketing, who assisted with the media buy. Streaming is obviously a lot more cost effective and highly targetable than traditional broadcast or cable television, where you're just putting an ad out there and hoping people come across it. This one, you can set it, to genre, to age groups, to specific cities, zip codes, locations, and then track all that. So we're learning a lot. The campaign is in progress. I'm getting updates weekly. It's really interesting to see. Actually, I think our top performer in terms of shows is Vanderpump Rules right now, which is not a show that I watch, but it's good to know that those folks are seeing our ads. There are in total three 15-second ads. All of these are really focused more on the potential recreational riders, thinking that people are in their home or they're on BART or some other mode watching streaming shows. And we want to capture them when they're in that sort of moment of thinking about, what they could be doing instead of watching Vanderpump or the show. We chose to do an illustration-based campaign. One of the big reasons for this, in addition to cost, it's really expensive to hire people and arrange ferry service to get the perfect shot. But it really universalizes the image. If you see a real human on TV, you can't necessarily associate yourself with that person. If you see an animated person, an illustrated person, you can. So Underground went out and got a great illustrator to put together some work. And this campaign is still ongoing. It began in late May, early June, and it will continue through August. So we'll have a full report in the future that we'll send to you. I'll let you know how it went. We'll see if this super short, sound-free 15-second video works. Just imagine some very nice music and ambient sound behind it. But it's an example of one of the three ads. Also imagine it's smoother, not on Zoom through. The idea is really to connect people to San Francisco, right? They see that this is kind of where we serve. This is our main hub. And then to kind of focus on those things that make the ferry special, that people tell us make the ferry special for them, and expose a wider audience to that. So one of them focuses on that couple. It also lifts up San Francisco, which is we're trying to be a part of that whole-scale effort by the city and by the Tourism Bureau and everyone else, the ferry building, to get people excited about San Francisco and get people back to San Francisco. And this campaign is about uplifting that as well. One of the other ads focuses on kids, and then another one is a mother and daughter standing at a ferry terminal. So we'll make sure that everyone has access to those. And then the third campaign this summer is our out-of-home display campaign. So this is more targeted on commuters, right? People who are sitting in traffic on the freeway, in the toll plaza. We want to basically tell them, we know that they're miserable, right? We've all sat in it, we've been in it. We know that they're miserable. We want to contrast what it's like to be on a ferry. And the way we decided to do that this time, a little bit different than what we did with the Best Way Back campaign in 2021, was to, short, punchy comments, not snarky. We sort of focus tested internally some more snarky comments, telling people that they were, making the wrong decision by sitting in their car. But we decided to stay with our more sort of positive, whimsical brand, and just came up with some punchy comments with imagery of our ferries. They're our best assets, our fleet. And so tying that in with the brand colors, we think will make a nice little impact. The 4-week run for these billboards is planned to start soon, potentially this week. And so we'll run that for 4 weeks. The Bay Bridge Toll Plaza is a key spot. There are places in Oakland, Berkeley, El Cerrito, all the way up to Solano County. So we capture sort of everyone that could potentially come into San Francisco. Hopefully they'll see one or more of these, in addition to seeing some digital ads, maybe seeing the streaming ad when they're watching cartoons with their kids, and kind of tie it all together. The ferry is the thing to do. McKinsey Communications, a longtime partner of ours, has been taking the lead on. In terms of what's next, it's a little odd to do 3 distinct campaigns with different firms leading them up. It's not the most efficient way to do things. It's how we wanted to test some stuff out this summer. We're planning to go forward with an integrated marketing campaign this fiscal year. We're talking to the firms now about costs and pitches for that. We'd have a unified theme and a constant presence in the intention marketplace throughout the year. And then there would be ramps, if we want to focus on a certain market, if we want to focus on a certain demographic, if we want to focus on a certain time period, going into spring, going into summer, we'll be able to ramp up the spend in those time periods. We'll also hopefully be able to incorporate some of the market research that hopefully one of the items later in the agenda, pending board approval, we'll be able to do some market research of non-riders and be able to use that to inform our marketing campaign on how to reach them. And then we'll continue to layer in our continued community outreach work done through our community outreach firms to support and integrate in with this marketing campaign. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. That's terrific. Directors, any questions?
Thanks, good job.
Yeah.
That is a very robust campaign. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. Very appealing too.
Yeah.
Look forward to hearing how it rolls out. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Aaron McGrath is going to give us a summary on the state of WETA financials, new fiscal year. So you'll get a full report on the last fiscal year at a meeting to come, but good to have a projection of where we landed if possible.
Afternoon. Everything I'm going to say is in your packet, in your report. I'm just going to give you a quick summary. We actually only have financials through May 31st. Depending on whether we have an August meeting, I might have a follow-up for you. But basically, we feel we're closing the fiscal year on budget. The areas that I wanted to highlight is the fair revenue. Despite a terrible winter, we feel like we're going to close the year mostly on budget. It's probably slightly under. Right now, we're trending under by about $300,000 to $400,000, but that doesn't include June, which was 10% ridership was 8 or 9% higher. So we think we'll end up a little more. So it's pretty good given the winter we had, right? And given the uncertainty a year ago when we weren't sure if there was another wave coming, all of those things. The fuel balanced out throughout the year, which was great. We were never sure how that was going to play out, and that ended up, starting really high and ending up lower, which is what we had anticipated in the budget. So it's nice to see that happened. Other than that, labor came in basically as we had anticipated. Once we incorporated the new COLAs in August, you'll recall we revised the budget to include that. And the only other thing on the revenue side is that our bridge toll revenues are going to be slightly, perhaps 15% below what we had budgeted because of toll revenue being lower. MTC is still not committing to what the final amount is. They're just saying, oh, go ahead and submit and we'll pay you what we feel like we have on hand. So there'll be a little uncertainty until that all closes out, but I'm in the process of trying to balance other revenue sources. And in some cases, we might need to pull a little more of the federal revenue that we had anticipated. In other cases, there are other fund sources that we haven't tapped into that we could use to close the year. So I'm not concerned at all about it. Capital budget, as we've discussed throughout the year, that we've had challenges in our vessel construction project, which is the biggest part of our budget. And so capital expenses are below budgeted amounts. And as discussed during the budget, the amounts that we knew we weren't going to spend this year were rebudgeted in next year's budget. So hopefully next year we'll get caught up on those projects. And that's just a high level overview. And I just wanted to see if you had any questions.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Aaron. And then lastly, our monthly ridership recovery report. Gabe Chan is going to give us an update on that. As Aaron mentioned, the report doesn't include the June information, which we expect to be more rosy than May. But Gabe will let us know where we stand.
Good afternoon, Director. So I don't have a presentation formally prepared, but everything's happy to review. So the story of May and June preliminarily is that weekends were doing as well. We had some big weekends for Pride, July 4th, and other kind of off weekends saw pretty good ridership as well. Right now, we're standing at about Saturday and Sundays. They're looking pretty comparable to Monday and Friday ridership. So it's encouraging for the weekends. And then on the note of commute ridership, it's still ticking up across all routes except South San Francisco, which is still kind of remaining flat or just below the month previous. And then in terms of kind of closing out the fiscal year for ridership, the June numbers that we preliminarily have, it looks like we're going to finish at about 92% of what we projected for the fiscal year. So just a little bit under, but still, I think, almost on the dot, given kind of all the uncertainty that we have going through winter and the spring. So yeah, it's like an encouraging picture for the summer. Happy to think of it.
Well done. Thank you, Gabe.
Thanks, Gabe. It is amazing that we came as close, I think, on both the budget and the ridership projections, given the winter that we had. So kudos to the whole team who worked on that, Kevin's team and also Aaron's team to develop the budget and the ridership. projections. Vice Chair Moyer, that concludes the reports of staff. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Perfect, thank you. Director, anything further? Any public questions or comments? See any hands raised? Melanie, you have anything?
Nobody.
All right, great, thank you. Then with that, I think we can go on to the next item, which is the consent calendar. There are 2 items on consent, the minutes and authorization of a master funding agreement with the MTC. Anybody want anything removed from consent? No,
Make a motion to approve consent.
the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Director Do. Any public comment? Seeing none, because we are going to vote.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Dublin,
Yes.
Director Beal. Yes.
Thank you. So then the next item is to approve the contract award to CPS HR Consulting for Human Resources Management Services.
Thank you, Vice Chair Moyer. Staff is excited about this, recommending that the board approve the contract with CPS. This would be for a $200,000 2-year term and a 2-year option for the same amount. As you know, we just never had dedicated HR staff, and it's about time that we did. Our staff is growing, so are our HR needs. The scope includes recruiting, onboarding of employees, modernizing our HR system, including employee resources like our HR guide and our employee handbook, coordinating with our legal team to ensure that WETA is in legal compliance on all HR issues, developing a comprehensive performance review and goal setting process for staff. This procurement started in March. We had 7 proposers. The evaluation committee selected CPS as the highest rated firm. The committee rated proposers based on their understanding of the scope, their qualifications and experience as a firm, and also for key personnel and cost. CPS was selected because of their extensive work with government clients and a unique understanding of WETA's needs. They have very qualified and dedicated personnel for this project. One of those folks, Debbie Gutman, is here, I think, on the Zoom call. If there are any questions from the board for her, with that, nothing else to add to that, recommending that the board approve the contract.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments? We are a quiet group. I just want the record to show it's not me. Please pass that on to our chair. I do have a question. I don't know if this is for you, Seamus, or for Aaron, or for Debbie, but how does it, very fascinating entity, but how does it work? Will there be someone dedicated from CPS?
Yeah,
Interesting.
Debbie would be our dedicated lead for the project.
Okay.
She has a support team that we can call on. They have a robust team that we can call on for specific needs as those come up, but good to have a point person.
But you'll have the same
Debbie,
sort
same
of person who will develop a knowledge of the uniqueness of WETA.
Correct.
Awesome. Any public comment? And I guess, Debbie, did you want to say anything? Well, since you've made the effort to be here, it looks like it. Yeah, come on
Yeah,
up.
I can introduce myself at least.
That'd be awesome.
Debbie Gutman. I am a principal HR consultant with CPS HR. I've been with the organization for 6 years. Prior to that, though, I have 25 years of HR experience in both the public and private sector. And like they were saying, although I will be the single point of contact for WETA, I do have a team of experts that I work with because HR is so expanded these days. It's really hard to keep up on an expertise in all areas. So it's very nice for me. We have a very collaborative team. So if something comes up that I'm like, oh, I haven't seen this before, I can send it out to the team and just get some feedback and maybe some resources that I didn't have. So we definitely work collaboratively for all of our clients. And I'm just really excited to work with you guys.
Perfect, thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, Melanie, back to you.
Vice Chair Moyer.
Yes.
Oh,
Your
wait.
motion.
Oh, do
Sorry,
I
Make a
motion.
motion.
Oh, well, see, that
I'll
was
make
me.
a motion to approve this award.
Second. Okay, you got it in a second.
Now I'm up.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Double.
Yes.
And Director Dee.
Yes.
Thanks for catching that, everybody. Let's see, we're on item 8, approved contract award to Corey Setapari and Galinas. Did I say that right? For surveying and market research services.
Thank you, Vice Chair Moyer. We're pleased to recommend authorization of contract award for surveying and market research services to Corey Kanapari and Galinas. This is a 5-year contract term, capped at a maximum of $150,000 per year. WETA received qualified proposals from 7 firms, and the procurement was quite competitive, which is really exciting to us as an evaluation panel to know that people want it. The staff report describes how CC&G's proposal rated so highly. Just wanted to highlight a few items from that staff report. One is that the firm has extensive local transit experience, which is obviously important working with a transit firm. There is good participation in the project management from the firm's principals, so there's buy-in from the highest level of the firm. And the cost proposal was really outstanding. Given the annual contract amount maximum under this procurement, this last piece is really important to ensuring that in addition to the extremely valuable onboard passenger survey that we'll be getting every year, CC&G will be able to produce market research focused on potential riders. So that's something I talked about in the marketing update that we hope to leverage this year and in the full 5 years of the contract. Because the survey is relatively affordable within that $150,000 max, we should be able to get some really good research on potential riders and then figure out how to bring them on board. That research can directly influence not just our marketing, but WETA's policies and service planning as well. Pending board approval, we plan to proceed in hopes of launching an onboard passenger survey in October of 2023, with results coming to the board in the winter. In parallel, we'll be working with CC&G to develop plans for fiscal year 24 market research. I also want to note that John Kanapari from CC&G is here in attendance. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Dr. Du?
No, just excellent to see. It's a fantastic high score, 98 out of 100. And I've worked with Corey Kanapari and Galanis in the past and have enjoyed that relationship a lot. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of this award.
John, would you like to introduce yourself since you came all this way?
Thank you. John Canterbury.
Would you mind doing it on the mic? Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm John Canterbury. I'm CEO of Corey Canterbury and Galanis. We are a local firm. We're here in San Francisco. As Thomas mentioned, we have a lot of related experience. We have over 20 years experience working with various transportation agencies, particularly in the Bay Area. It's really our specialty. We work with other agencies as well. We have very specific research experience, having worked with WETA in the past, as well as Golden Gate Ferry. Super excited about this contract. As Thomas mentioned, it was very competitive. We're grateful, that we were selected, but we're also very confident that we're going to exceed your expectations and look forward to working with you for the next few years.
We look forward to hearing more from you. So thank you very much. Thanks for being here today.
Absolutely.
All right. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the contract. Oh, second.
Okay. All right. No. Oh, public comment. I keep forgetting. Get one down, forget the other. Any public comment? I don't see anybody. Yes, sorry, I was looking to see if someone was standing. But you're waiting for the next item, aren't you? Okay. Yes.
Director Double.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So now with much anticipation, we are on item number 9, which is to approve contract award to Manson Construction Company for dredging and marine construction services for the Vallejo Terminal Dredging Project at long last.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Moyer and Board of Directors, Chad Nason, Senior Planner and Project Manager. This item is to award the contract to Manson Construction Company for the 2023 Vallejo Ferry Terminal Dredging Project in the amount of $2,118,000. Also authorize the contract contingency of 15% and authorize the Executive Director to enter into the contract and take any actions necessary to support the contract. The Vallejo Ferry Terminal requires maintenance dredging every 2 to 4 years. A full dredge of the terminal is due in 2023. The scope of the work is outlined in the staff report. The project will be completed in this dredging window, and on May 4th of this year, the Board of Directors authorized issuance of the invitation for bids. Bid was released on May 15th. Bids were due on June 15th. 2 bids were received. The bid submitted by Manson Construction Company was deemed to be the lowest bid based upon their price proposal that was submitted. Staff determined that the Manson bid was responsive and complete. The amount of the bid is greater than the engineer's estimate. That was $1,431,000. The bid was deemed fair and reasonable, notwithstanding the engineer's estimate, because the costs associated with mobilization, demobilization, and transportation of the temporary float from Pier 48.5 to Vallejo and back, those costs have increased substantially compared to the last time we dredged in 2021. That's what the engineer's estimate was largely based on. The project is in the FY24 budget of the amount of $2,842,000. It is funded with FTA grant funds and Regional Measure 1 bridge toll revenues. Sufficient funds are in the budget to support award of this contract. It's important to note that staff has kicked off the environmental review process for the terminal reconfiguration project, and we anticipate finishing the environmental review in the spring of next year, and hopefully we'll be able to roll into permitting at that time or before. We do anticipate that one more dredge cycle will be required prior to our ability to do the configuration project. That concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you. And I wanted to compliment you on the staff report. I thought it was very well written and self-explanatory. So thank you very much for that effort. Directors, any questions or comments for Tom? Now see how well you did. Any public comment? Any motion?
Make a motion.
And second? All right, did I cover all the bases? Awesome.
Vice Chair Boyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del Bono,
Yes.
and Director Booth.
Yeah.
Thank you. Looking forward to that, being close to the last one. Oh, yeah. Let's see. The next item is the approval of the sole source contract award to Pacific Power Group for main engine preventative maintenance services.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Moyer, board members. I'm Jeff Powell, Engineering and Maintenance Administrator. Item 10 for your consideration is a sole source contract award PPG for the main engine preventive maintenance and services for 6 different vessels. All these vessels are equipped with an MTU manufactured engine, some with different model engines, which require different services at different hour intervals. Service includes 4 vessels of injector changes and 2 vessels performing more extensive work referred to as QL3 or midlife work. More extensive work includes items such as high pressure, low pressure fuel pumps, injectors, turbo overhauls, seawater pumps, engine cooling pumps, and other components. You may notice a large delta between the 2 QL3 works, and I want to point that out that the Mare Island is a 16-cylinder engine and includes cylinder head exchanges, where the Carina is a 12-cylinder engine and does not include cylinder head exchanges. These are the main driving factors for the difference in price between the 2 vessels and the QL3 work. As outlined in the board memo, this is a sole source procurement and justification is documented in the procurement folders. PPG is the MTU authorized distributor for the region that we operate in, and with PPG providing the parts and service, this maintains warranties that have proven advantageous in the past for us. An independent cost estimate was obtained and is within 5% of the value against the quote and was found to be fair and reasonable. This has also been documented in the project folders. This consideration also includes a contingency amount to allow for sight unseen conditions that may arise during this routine work that we've seen in the past. Funding for this program has been identified and approved in the 23-24 budget, and is staff's recommendation for a favorable consideration for the items as listed in the recommendation of the board document. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. I thought the staff report was great. Thank you very much for that. Really explained a lot. Thank you. Directors? Yeah. Awesome. Any public comment? Any questions from anybody? No? All right.
Motion to approve this contract.
Second.
Mr. Boyer,
Yes, please.
Director Gaba,
Yes.
Director Double.
Yes.
Director.
Yes.
Jeff, thanks for keeping this work moving.
Yeah.
All right, adopt WETA fiscal year 2024 to 2028 regional measure 5-year operating plan.
We're making record time here, so I'll just add a little bit of
Yeah.
flavor on this one.
Nothing to do with me, by the way.
This is an important item. This is an item that's required by RM3. We have some obligations before we can receive funding under RM3. Kevin will talk about what's included in the plan. One of the things that is required is the establishment of performance metrics. And those metrics are determined by WETA in consultation with MTC. But that's different from how previous bridge toll measures outline what the performance measure should look like. WETA has a more front and center role, but these metrics in this plan ultimately still need to be embraced by MTC before we can receive operating funding under the operating agreement that MTC will approve with WETA after this 5-year plan is approved by the board. Over the course of the plan, you can see that we're bringing new services online, and the idea was that RM3 would support the expansion of WETA service to places like Treasure Island, Mission Bay, Berkeley, Redwood City, etc. Under the plan, you'll see that we are still doing that, but it is costing more because we're using RM3 revenues to support the maintenance of our existing services more than we thought we would need to. Under RM3 because of the impacts of the pandemic on ridership and also the impacts of inflation. These are not cost impacts that are unique to WETA. Every transit agency is experiencing these inflationary impacts. So this RM3 will give this agency some ability to expand, but the fact is we're going to need more operating revenue to do the kind of expansion that we contemplated when RM3 was approved. We're going to need more operating revenue to expand in the ways that I think our service vision ultimately, when the board hears about that item, contemplates that we just should expand in the future. So that's just a cautionary tale. I feel like I'm channeling Tony and Tinley when I talk about things like this, but they are the facts. One point that I wanted to emphasize, because the board has asked about it in the past and we didn't have an answer right away, but when it comes to interest from the rollover funding that is in an account that's reserved for WETA, we will retain the interest from those funds. So that's a significant win for us in our negotiations with MTC. And I think the performance metrics that you'll see included in this plan, even though they are interim, are also a win because they're pretty flexible for us during this 5-year plan. We're going to update this plan every year, so things will change, and Kevin will talk more about what's included in the process to do that.
Thank you for the introduction, Seamus. Kevin Conley, Manager of Planning and Development here at WETA. This thing. Trust that there's people on the Zoom. As Seamus mentioned, this is a prerequisite for MTC for RM3 operating funds. And while it was a prerequisite to produce an operating plan, and it's strictly entitled a 5-year operating plan, there was not a lot of prerequisites about the form or structure of that plan. So staff had quite a bit of latitude, and we've elected to do something that's consistent with our other documents that we produce on an annual basis or biannual basis, in particular our budget and our short-range transit plan. So if you're familiar with those documents, last year we brought the short-range transit plan. This is very consistent with that in terms of look, feel, structure, and even the base fundamental assumptions. A couple of things, Seamus gave a great introduction of the whole program. I'll just highlight some of these, which is that we have $300 million in capital funding. This plan does not deal with the capital funding. It is only required for the operating component of the RM3 program, not the capital. There is no requirement, or there's no companion requirement for the capital part of the RM3 program. The way the funding works out in terms of operations, there is 16% of the revenue that's collected for RM3 operating is divided between 3 users, Express Bus, Transbay, and WETA. and WETA receives 58% of that 16%. So while it can be confusing, it was even confusing for the staff that we have actual gross dollar figures in the legislation or in some of the material. It's really a percentage of the collected revenues. So in other words, if revenues are down for a year, we're not necessarily getting what is understood to be 35 million at the sort of maturation of the operating revenue portion. Unused, a very significant win in terms of RM3 versus RM2 is unused operating revenue can be carried over to a reserve fund. Board members who are not familiar, RM2 monies do not have that ability, and that money always went back to MTC. So we never were able to have a reserve fund of our unused revenues. The legislation requires the 5-year plan, as we said, and then Seamus mentioned that the performance measures are also required. It's a prerequisite. Mutually, the decision has been between MTC staff and WETA staff that we're punting this year in terms of performance measures because so little is known. That's actually also mutually agreed to by the Express Bus staff. And we're just agreeing that we're going to look at it in the future and really once things sort of settle down in terms of performance. So those are the high level things. I'll divide it in 2 parts here, and I'm not going to exhaustively go through all these. I've already talked about, we used the budget and used the SRTP as a basis for this document. Our expansion projects are pushed out 1 year from what we assumed in the short range transit plan. So what you'll see here is a year later start date for both Berkeley, Mission Bay, and Treasure Island. Secondly, the pilot projects, which was a new thing that we developed for the budget, which is the idea that unforeseen new projects may arise that we may want to trial run for 6 months or up to a year. They're included as part of our RM3 operating. Although there's a caveat that I'll get to when we get to the year-by-year account. And then finally, electrification of the system, as you'll see, becomes a pretty significant development in terms of our strategy for cost savings. On the MTC side, the operating funds are for this time period, fiscal year 24 to 28. The 35 million begins not in year 5, which would be 2023, but in 2026, based on reduced, lower than anticipated collection of revenues. The initial carryover balance, therefore, is 60 million, not what we would have assumed is 70. The future operating funds, again, are dependent on traffic and tolling levels. They're also depending on toll increase, which is part of the legislation that could go into effect in the next year or 2 with an additional dollar. So with that, I'm going to walk us through the 5-year program here. And this is the treetop overview. On the top 2 rows is our operating expenses and revenues for the WETA budget. Fiscal year 24 is the adopted budget. And then we carry forward for the following 5 years, following 4 years based on some key assumptions, which is operating expenses increase about 3% annually. And we have ridership increases of range from 3 to 5% annually. The lower 3 rows are, one is the operating expenditure. In other words, how much money we're using from our RM3 revenues to fund the system. The transfer to reserve would be the money that we're not using and putting into the reserve. And then the final line is the actual reserve itself. And as you can see for fiscal year 24, that reserve figure is at 60 million. And you can see we're not using 12.9 of the 21 plus million. And so therefore we get to 72.9 next year in terms of our reserve or carryover account. So I'm just going to walk through year by year, and I've already just talked a little bit about fiscal year 24. I think it's pretty clear. Relief funds available to us anymore. We have 28 million with no ability to carry over to cover our budget. So there's no carryover from fiscal year 25 to 26. In 26, this is the first full year that we would receive, or we're anticipating receiving the 35 million, the sort of maximum allotment And as a result, that is the first year that we're going to actually introduce our pilot program. Before now, we can still do pilot programs, and we are anticipating, for example, doing an Oakland Estuary pilot program this spring. That's funded 100% by other sources. We're not putting any RM3 money into it, and that will have to be the case in fiscal year 25 as well. But in 26, with the full allotment of 35 million, we will have the ability to also help fund a pilot program. You can see here that we're using almost 30 million of our 35 million allotment. We're transferring over 5 million or so to the reserve fund. And then very importantly, Oakland, Alameda, and Seaplane Lagoon, 2 of our 3 core services are electrified. Important because electrified systems we're anticipating now are 20% less in cost and operating expenses. So the electrification of the system is actually our most effective strategy in terms of expense reduction. In 2027, this is your first year we see new services, and we're assuming Treasure Island, Mission Bay open in the same year. Be aware that Treasure Island is a no-cost service. It's funded by another source. Mission Bay is funded by WETA, in other words, RM3. Again, we're using a significant number, 32 million from RM3 towards our budget. Electrification is really kicking in here with downtown, Harbor Bay, and our Central Bay facility all electrified. And we have at this point in time, 4 years from now, 5 vessels in our electric fleet. And if I'm going too fast, by all means, interrupt. And then the final year, Berkeley opens. Now, Redwood City in our short range transit plan was open in 28. We're now saying it's 29. And these are legitimate. I will admit that we were probably overly optimistic on the opening dates. We did the SRTP last year. Now, since then, there's been different issues for each one of these projects, and they're probably all a year behind where we thought they would be. Berkeley opens in 28. We're using 33 of the 35 million. And our first diesel electric conversion debuts in 28. In addition to the new vessels that we're buying and the replacement vessels, that brings our electric fleet total up to 9 vessels. So a graphic look at our electrification program here is in orange are the facilities and the terminals. And you can see here, and this is our most aggressive estimate that we think we're comfortable with. It is doable. That by 2030, so in other words, in 7 years, virtually every one of our candidate terminals will be electrified. That doesn't include the longer term ones, Vallejo as well as Redwood City, which we don't see as potential right now to electric. And by 2035, all of our facilities, as well as many, many vessels, and I lost track of the number, I think it's around 14 vessels, are electric. A word about the clear issue, and I'll go back to and mention that by fiscal year 28, we're using almost our entire 35 million allocation towards the budget. And we're at what in our future projections are showing a high point in terms of our carryover reserve. From that point forward, we start to go negative and it starts to diminish. In terms of it's 80 million, and we start to use more of it than we do and have money coming in. Some strategies, and obviously one of the best strategies is to get a new revenue source and have additional revenue. But this little graphic is a very simple way of describing the different strategies that we've been testing and analyzing internally within the staff. The green arrow represents sort of the RM3 subsidy that's required, and the blue arrow represents a potential action that you can take. So from left to right, on the left-hand side is you increase your fares by 20% across the board. That doesn't have a tremendous impact. It drops your RM3 subsidy requirement by less than 5%. You increase your ridership by 20%. You just really all of a sudden have a lot more riders. Again, it doesn't really move your subsidy that much because our ridership and our fare revenue is not as significant of revenue source as others. Our operating expenses go up by 5%, our subsidy goes up by 5%. And the final one on the right-hand side is expense. We reduce your expenses. If you can reduce your expenses, your subsidy goes down proportionally. And this is why the electrification program is critical to our kind of financial future, not just our environmental future. So with that, the next steps is that this plan, we anticipate being a yearly appearance with the board. We guarantee that things will change over the course of this next year. And all these projects will be different on some respects. We will submit this to MTC. We'll be developing performance measures over the course of this year, potentially over the course of 2 years, given sort of how uncertain a lot of the transit performance is in the Bay Area. We'll make future adjustments, and then we'll also, key strategy for WETA is to explore future funding sources as well. So with that, I can conclude and take any questions.
Thank you. Very interesting. Very good.
I have a couple of questions. If you go back to slide 10, I believe. I noticed that Redwood City is not listed here, but Berkeley is. So it should be around 2029. Is there a reason it's not included?
Well, Redwood City and Vallejo are both not potential to electric technology as of
right.
now.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
and
that makes
Berkeley
sense.
is. It's a
Yeah.
short 7-mile
Right.
trip.
Fantastic. Good. And then slide 11. When you say increase fares by 20% between year 6 and 10, is that beyond inflation, or would that be including inflation? Is that
Beyond inflation.
Beyond
So it'll be above and beyond what our plan is, and I
Yeah.
should mention that. Our assumption is fares increase according to our 5-year fare program. They keep pace with inflation.
great? And then regarding, the fare box recovery rate is included here on page 10. And so for fiscal year 24, it's estimated at 21%. Then it goes to 22, 23, 24, and then up to 28%. And both Seamus and you mentioned regarding metrics. Will MTC and WETA, will there be a strong focus on fare box recovery, or are we looking at other metrics to show how successful our system is?
RM3 requires fare box to be a metric.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we need to have that as a metric. The way that it's outlined in the interim performance measures is that we just have to do better than we did last year.
Okay.
And that's consistent with how MTC has characterized the performance measures for the express bus program under RM3. So we're being treated the same way that they are. What we're going to, fare box recovery is definitely a lower priority than it used to be. And that's a good thing. That's consistent with our pandemic recovery program priorities. And so we think that that's going to continue at the regional level, but it will still need to be a metric. Eventually, we're going to need to say a percentage that our system-wide and expansion routes will collect from a fare box standpoint. And it'll be a discussion with MTC staff, and ultimately when they establish permanent performance metrics, it will go to their board. So we'll work to get the best metric in place, metric that is fair. One of the things that we've talked with them is making sure that WETA isn't held to a higher standard than the rest of the region's transit systems. If we have a performance metric that is a certain percentage, and our peers don't achieve a metric that's that same percentage, then why should we be held to a higher standard? Let's make sure that we're being treated the same way and treated flexibly if we don't achieve what the goals happen to be. And there are definitely a lot of off ramps under RM3. There's a lot of language that talks about what we do if we don't achieve the metrics, and it doesn't mean we lose our funding. There are a lot of things that we can do working with MTC to make sure we preserve funding, establish new metrics that are fair, and we're confident we can work through that process.
Great, okay, this is fantastic. Yeah, I don't want to continue to see it creep up. It just, to me, it just, in the past, we've wanted our commuter transit systems to have a really high fare box recovery rate. And I think from an equity and affordability perspective, we have having it be one part of the pie, an important part of the pie, but not the primary part of the revenue pie is so important. It helps us keep the fares down, and also it having other sources of revenue is so important. So that's fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. There was one more question I had about, we plan to use our reserve for future operating expenses. We're not planning on using the reserve for capital improvements.
Well, I don't think we have not set up a business rule
Mhm.
about that. The forecast means clearly more for the operating side.
Yeah,
But it's possible that flips.
okay,
The positive thing is we have flexibility
yeah,
of using it for capital as well.
great. And then will there be a capital plan requirement or the use of the capital funds of RM3 too, or?
So MTC and the legislation does not require the equivalent of this for the capital side.
Okay,
And as of now, we don't have, it's basically anything with our capital is kind of woven into our other material
yeah,
that we do. We haven't done anything, we weren't planning on doing anything discrete just for our R3 program. That can change. We could do that.
yeah, I think it would be just interesting to know. So that's capped out at 300 million over what time period? We could, yeah, right? Yeah, okay, so just understanding how that fits into our capital plan. Future years would be great, but this is perfect. I think this serves all of my needs in regards to RM3. So thank you.
And you'll see that in the capital budgets that come to you, what we're requesting, what we're planning to request from MTC in RM3 funds for any given year.
Yeah.
So that'll be.
Do they have a maximum allotment per year or per couple of years? Have they talked about that?
They haven't talked about that. It's anticipated, I think, Aaron, that they're going to bond at some point against RM3 revenues. And so that would allow us to, to hopefully not be constrained as much as we would otherwise.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. Director Delbon?
I don't have a question, it's kind of a statement. In regards to expansion of service, specifically to Berkeley, I mean, we've had this discussion before. I just want to make sure like the money's there and we're talking about it, but we're still looking for, our partners that we partner with to put skin in the game too.
Exactly.
I just want to be clear on that because you hear this and it looks like, oh, okay, we're going to go do everything. That's not the case. I mean, we've had several discussions with Berkeley and about needs and that we need to address. We still haven't seen it yet, but I just want to make sure that like somebody on the board says something about that.
If this was a 10-year plan, you would see a fiscal cliff where we can't afford to operate the services we run today or the expansion services anymore because we've exhausted that reserve fund. And so at some point, and that's okay, every transit agency has a long-term fiscal cliff because they're all limited in terms of financial capacity in some respect, but it shows that we need something out of this 2026 ballot measure that's going to provide transit agencies with operating resources. We will need something out of that to make up for the reduced capacity that we have for expansion under RM3 And any other opportunities that come up at the regional level, we will need something out of that. And yes, I think every expansion service that we're talking about, we should be trying to leverage as much as we can to cover operating costs. And there are examples of that being done here on the San Francisco waterfront with the power development in the southeastern waterfront. We've got Treasure Island with their tolling policy that will hopefully be put in place soon that helps cover the operating costs associated with that service. Those are the sorts of strategies that we need to be more actively advocating for.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I just had some comments as well. You know, like, I really appreciate how we're going to be leveraging the marketing and surveys to increase, you know, new ridership and hopefully help in that regard. And then, you know, just keeping an eye on technology advancements in like the hydro area to address those longer range trips. And, you know, just like you said, always seeking new funding opportunities to continue to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible. I did want to point out when I was being interviewed by the Senate Rules Committee, they were very interested in hearing how we had increased our ridership vis-a-vis other agencies in the area. So, you know, kudos to the team for all the work you've done there to increase our ridership.
Thank you. Great, another great report. So thank you for that. And I love the simplicity, but yeah, of the slides, but yet they're very informative. Really appreciate that. I do have a couple of comments and questions. First, it's really, there's pros and cons. I promised to Mayor Lee that Mission Bay would be open 4 or 5 years ago. So seeing it pushed out as far as it's pushed out is just plain sad. But I really do hope it moves forward. But what is really terrific to see is the overall conversion, you know, that added to Jeff's report and just the steady marching on of the upgrades to the fleet and the movement to something that's more environmentally friendly and hopefully can continue to go as the technology continues is really gratifying. So thank you for being pragmatic about that. And hopefully the funding will keep pace, but I really appreciate how all of you have looked for those opportunities and leveraged them. And this being but one of those opportunities. I do have a question about submitting this actual plan to MTC. Do they have a do they just accept it, or do they comment on it? Would they propose revisions? Like, what is their role in all of this?
It will be included in the supplemental operating agreement that ultimately.
With the plan
allows us
itself,
to-
will they
the
comment
plan.
on the plan?
We've shared it with staff and consulted with them on
So
the
the
development of it,
guard-
and they've given us the thumbs up on this plan. So they'll be recommending that the commission approve it when the supplemental agreement.
Okay,
goes
so there's a possibility that the commission itself could ask for a change to it.
There is a
Okay.
possibility.
Okay. That's it. I know that we have an action item here, but before we get to that, is there anyone from the public that wants to speak?
The first one is Lorianne Castro.
Oh, Commissioner. Go ahead, Commissioner Castro.
Yes, hello, this is Loriana. I hope you can hear me. Thank you, Vice Chair Moyer and directors. I, as you know, have been following your meetings and progress sort of religiously on behalf of the Port of Redwood City. And I would like to thank Seamus and Kevin for calling out Redwood City in the presentation and clarifying that this 5-year plan is an operating budget and not a capital budget, and therefore Redwood City, the project expansion is not being ignored. However, I would like to state that I'm concerned and disappointed to hear that we're really talking about moving that expansion project out to 2029 when we originally presented our stakeholders with the Gulf shot projections on the project. we were talking about 2026. And then realistically, we kind of told people that's not really a good, reasonable projection. Will probably be in 2027. Now we're talking 2029. I'm worried about keeping our stakeholders and the people on the peninsula engaged in the project. If we don't show progress and move forward, we're in the environmental process now. And I just want to state that there is a tremendous demand for ferry service. And even if we cannot manage budgeting for daily commute service, WETA should consider that getting the landside improvements and the dock built will allow WETA some flexibility to do special event service, because I think you'll have full boats going both directions. I really believe that many of the constituents I talk to on an almost daily basis since I started this project in 2008 is that people do not want to get in their cars to get up to the city or to Oakland for special events. And they really want an alternative for Giants games and Warriors games. Caltrain is oversubscribed. We really do need to provide people with more options. And I think WETA will find that it would be a profitable service. So if we could just keep pushing for getting the terminal built, whether or not there are operating funds for a daily commute service, the terminal itself can become a source of revenue for WETA. And I hope I'm not overstating the case, but like I say, I talk to people every day in my community, and everybody's like, when is that going to happen? We really want to have that option. So even if they aren't regular commuters to the city, they want to be able to get on a ferry. So I hope that there are options to continue pushing that expansion project forward. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Loriana, and thanks for your passion and that perspective. Yes. Anybody else who wants to make a comment?
Nobody else has signed up.
Vice Chair Moyer, if I could just
You want to
respond to
respond? Sure.
one thing that Loriana said, because she's a great mind reader on this issue. We are looking at ways that we might be able to do exactly what she talked about and get Redwood City residents excited about ferry service by perhaps demonstrating it. We do have funds in the 5-year plan that we've set aside for pilot projects. And that, I think that's one that we are interested in looking at, perhaps doing something that's been done before in Redwood City. And I understand after talking to the port executive director that it's something we could potentially do again. So we will look at that.
Yeah, I recall it well. Anybody else that would like to? And that would be great. I'd be supportive of that. Anybody else that would that's not in the room or not in the room that would like to comment? Okay. So we need a motion, please. Say it loud and proud.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you both.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes, please.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del Bono,
Yes.
and Director Hughes.
Yes.
Thank you, team, for the work.
All right, thanks.
That brings us to item number 12, which is an update on the institutional employer pass pilot program. Yay.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Directors. Arti Kravanan with Planning and Development WETA. Can you hear me better?
Wow.
So this is an information item on institutional employer pass pilot, which is branded as Birthday Pass. And So just to give a quick background, the Clipper Bay Pass pilot was launched in August of last year. It was one of the near-term initiatives that resulted from the Fare Coordination and Integration Study, which was co-managed by MTC and BART, launched in 2020. Since the program launched, there has been extensive collaboration between MTC, BART, and multiple transit agencies, including WETA. So the pilot has been launched in 2 phases. The first phase was in August of last year, which was for educational institutions and selected affordable housing properties. The second phase is being expanded to some of the employers. So joining us today, we have the project staff members, Ryan Reeves, who is the Clipper Bay Pass program manager from BART, and we have Terrence Lee, who is the policy and financial analyst at MTC. So they are here to present phase 1 update and the next steps for the launching of phase 2. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Artie.
Sarti, and good afternoon, directors. Thank you for having us. My name is Terrence Lee. I work at the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and I've been supporting an effort to better coordinate and integrate fare policy in the region over the last few years. And I'm joined here by Ryan Reeves at BART, who is managing the pilot of a new regional institutional pass pilot, now branded the Clipper Bay Pass. And we're here to share with you today an overview of the pilot, where we are now, and some preliminary insights from the first year of the pilot. So as Artie mentioned, the Clipper Bay Pass pilot stems from a 2-year study to evaluate ways to better coordinate and integrate fare policy in our vast 9-county region with over 24 transit operators. Under the direction from the Fare Integration Task Force, which was a governing body consisting of general managers from transit operators, this was an effort that was co-led by MTC and BART with substantial engagement with staff from transit operators. The study evaluated different fare policies for their impact on 4 key areas that are listed on this slide: customer value, payment experience, equity, and future transit. The study culminated with the adoption of a fare policy vision statement, which directed staff to pilot various initiatives to understand its impact on these areas. The first policy in this vision statement directed staff to pilot a regional institutional pass program, now called the Clipper Bay Pass. So the Clipper Bay Pass is the Bay Area's first unlimited regional transit pass for rides on all bus, ferry, and rail services anytime, anywhere. As an institutional pass program, organizations would purchase this pass to cover all of their employees or constituents. This is similar to AC Transit's Easy Pass, Caltrain's Go Pass, or BTA's EcoPass. And it would, but this would enable access to all Bay Area transit services on Clipper. In the first phase of the pilot, now on the way, we partnered with 4 higher educational institutions, as well as Mid-Penn Housing, to provide the Clipper Bay Pass to university students and affordable housing residents. Phase 1, which has a critical research goal, also included a randomized control trial to more robustly understand the impacts that a regional pass would have on ridership. And phase 2 will partner with employers, transportation management associations, and other organizations to broaden access to Bay Pass. So through quantitative analyses of travel patterns that we can collect through cards, as well as more qualitative analyses through participant surveys, our goals are to understand how a regional pass might better meet the needs of transit riders. We want to understand if and how it might increase transit ridership in support of our region's climate change sustainability goals. And we want the pilot and all of the lessons learned to inform how we might develop a successful permanent program. And Ryan will now speak to some of the insights from the first phase.
Thanks, Terrence. So for phase 1, we had over 50,000 students and residents who are eligible for the Bay Pass across the 4 universities and 13 affordable housing properties. The locations were selected for their geographic diversity, as well as the requirement to have an existing pass program. So the phase is funded partially by the existing single agency pass products that the institutions have already purchased, as well as funding from MTC. So this phase, as Terrence mentioned, it's a randomized control trial. So 25% of students were randomly selected, received the upgraded Bay Pass, while all other students kept their existing institutional passes. This really allowed us to compare the trends across the students with the existing pass and those who had the upgraded Bay Pass. So our evaluation work is really just getting started, but we're excited to share that in the first 10 months of the pilot, we've already seen 2 million trips that have been taken with Bay Pass. Our initial data has shown that people with Bay Pass are taking significantly more trips than those with just the single agency institutional passes in the range of about 35% more trips. So we've received a lot of positive feedback to date from students about the impact of the pilot, especially as you can see here in terms of helping people get around more easily and also encouraging folks to take new trips that they might not have taken before. Our partners, executive staff and administrative staff have also been equally as supportive of the pilot and really encouraged about what the program has done for students and residents. We've also conducted 2 survey rounds with students, including people with Bay Pass and students who have the single institutional pass, to really analyze the impacts, the attitudes, trends, and perceptions of Bay Pass, including understanding really who's being impacted and served by this type of pass and who's not. And so some initial sort of highlights that we've heard from some of the students are shown here. We're planning to release a more detailed analysis later this year on the survey results. We have a video that I think it sounds like we're not going to be able to share here today, but the link is available. So this is just a brief video that really highlights student voices and resident voices to communicate the value and impact of this pilot pass that we just released last week. So I encourage you to check that out. And so with this phase of the pilot really successfully underway for university students and affordable housing residents, we're looking now to expand the pilot to new types of partners. So I'll turn it back to Terrence to give some highlights on the next phase of the work. Oops, oh, that is working, but not falling, I guess.
Thanks, Ryan. So as Ryan mentioned, we're now beginning our second phase of the pilot, which broadened access to specifically to employers. And in the second phase of the pilot, we'll be partnering with employers to provide their employees with access to unlimited regional transit. As a pilot, similar to the first phase of the pilot, we're interested in seeing if and how Bay Pass could increase transit ridership and improve the customer experience. We want to evaluate how Bay Pass might impact travel behavior. We want to explore Bay Pass as a new revenue source to support operator financial sustainability. And towards our goal, our equity goals, we want to reduce the cost burden for transit-dependent communities by working specifically with organizations and employers beyond the traditional office setting. And we want to support the region's climate change and sustainability goals. So we want to be thoughtful and deliberate with the implementation of this new pilot and product. And accordingly, we've proposed a phased approach with a limited scale of up to 10 employers and a total of 20,000 employees in the second phase of the pilot. We'll start with 3 employers and up to 5,000 employees in the very near term. And we'll seek to launch with the remaining 7 or so employers on a rolling basis following the execution of a participation agreement between NTC and transit operators to more formally codify the pilot mechanics and terms. This slide highlights some of the near-term milestones for launch, which again, we're targeting for late summer, early fall of this year. And as has been the case, we want this to be a regional effort with significant collaboration from all our operator partners. So that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to take any questions or comments.
Great. Thank you, Terrence and Ryan. Sure.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for working on this. Having a Bay Pass in general is, I cannot express how excited I am, and I hope that we can find a permanent way to or make it a permanent part of our transit system. For the students who are now in the program, how long will they be able to keep their passes?
So it's a 2-year pilot. So with the universities, we began the pilot in August of 2024, and the pilot, it began in August 2022 last year. And with it being a 2-year pilot, it'll expire either at the conclusion of the of academic year or in August, depending on the existing policy that the university has with the single institutional pass program.
Okay, and then the same for the employers, will that be a full 2 years too, or will it be less than that?
For phase two. So we're looking to sign 1-year contracts.
Okay.
And have the pilot period run 2 years.
Okay. And for the students, I completely understand the need to do a quarter or have a random sample so that you can evaluate it, but has there been any discussion about increasing the number of students who can participate in the program? Or I know that there are issues with those students who don't have a Bay Pass, for instance.
Yeah. We're currently evaluating ways to extend the first phase of the pilot. We've gotten some very positive feedback from our partners at the institutions, and they're very interested in continuing the program, expanding the program for more of their students. So these are questions we're actively grappling with and working through. I don't think we have a firm answer right now in terms of how and when we might be able to do that.
Great. And I did see that for the student, for the university, or for the higher education institutions, that the difference between those with the Bay Pass and those without is actually a 30% increase in ridership or in travel.
Yeah, so this is preliminary data, and we'll continue to refine the data as more is become available. But based on the first eight months of research, people with the Clipper Bay Pass are taking on average 35% more trips than their peers with just a single agency pass.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm so excited. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask how you will be selecting the employers.
So really our goal with phase two with the employers is to select, we're going to aim for 10 employers and to select a range of types of industries, as well as a range of locations across the Bay Area. We're also looking to make sure that we're prioritizing equity in terms of not just doing sort of traditional office settings and traditional office workers who are most likely to have more access to these types of institutional passes. So we're looking in with service industry, manufacturing, retail, to really broaden, the types of partners that can participate. So we have shown here actually on our website, there's a way for folks to provide an interest form. So we're sort of at the beginning of starting to have conversations with employers that have contacted us. We're going to be doing more proactive outreach. Once we have sort of the list of potential interested employers, we'll look to make sure we're meeting some of that criteria when we select in terms of geographic diversity and a range of types of industries.
Perfect. Yeah, I can see a lot of application for that, especially where you have to get a ferry, for example, you have to have multiple modes or even many of the corridors, as you know better than I. What about, maybe I missed it, but what about what experience have you gleaned from working with MidPenn and their population?
Yeah, so they, I wish I could show you the video because there's a lot of great quotes and feedback from residents, especially there are some senior communities of folks that have just really expressed a lot of support for this type of pass, especially people that don't have access to a car. And so the affordable housing properties they've been a great case study for us to really see how to expand this. And the feedback has really been overwhelmingly positive. So.
And I think I saw in the staff report that it was three properties that were selected.
It's 13 actually.
13. So does it span both sides of the bay?
Yeah, there's
it's 3 in San Mateo, and I think all of the balance in Alameda.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. So, any lessons learned that you would do differently yet, or is it too soon?
You know, for phase one, we're still, I think, working through the mechanics of implementation in terms of how you activate cards and troubleshoot different issues that students have to make sure it's totally seamless. I think those are some of the things that we'll still work to strategize around for the next phase.
I think that about, yeah, that's the primary lesson for us as a project team, just, figuring out mechanics of how to launch a program like this. But, I think once it's out there, the reception has been very, very positive. I think there's definitely a need for a product like this, a pass like this, and it's a matter of figuring out how to get it to as many people as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, please, of course.
So you, Director Moyer, you triggered a question for me here. Can you glean from the Clifford data the potential pricing structure of a future Bay Pass that is financially sound, or is the data too aggregated in order to glean that kind of? So we want to make sure that our transit agencies feel like they're made whole, right? And so can you utilize the data to figure out potential pricing in the future, or is that part of the next phase as well?
It's more appropriate for the second phase of the pilot, with students being a pretty special population, and travel patterns there might not be applicable to a different population. But I think we have available to us the requisite data that we would need to come to a price that would work for everyone.
Yeah.
A price that would match, an employer's willingness to pay, as well as recovering costs for transit operators. We definitely want to be looking at this, through the lens of at least, revenue neutral, if not a new revenue source for transit operators.
Fantastic. And I'm, as a board member, and as a, wearing the regional planner hat, I would love to see the securing funding so that we can continue these pilots and expand it to more students rather than just a quarter of them. But I understand from an assessment perspective as well, the need to have the randomized sample. So I really appreciate the thoughtful implementation. And I know that there have been some challenges and that you're working through them, and can't wait to see what the next phase leads to. So thank you.
Thank you. Glad to have your support.
So before you go, any comments or questions from the members of the public? Melanie, do you have anybody signed up? Anybody on the video that wants to make a comment? Not seeing any hands raised. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering, is this?
Sorry. If you don't come forward, we can't capture you on the mic, and that's important for the public record. So thank you. Don't be shy.
I just had a question, whether or not, is this meant for employers, or is it also going to be available to individuals that are interested in this pass as well?
Right now, the program is designed as an institutional pass. So the primary relationship would be with an organization, an employer, a university, a transportation management association. And the idea is that said organization would purchase the pass for all of their constituents. But right now, it's not designed for an individual to purchase.
Okay, and I guess a follow-up question would be, I would guess that for employers that purchases pass, it would be like subsidized, or it would be cheap. Maybe they purchase the passes for their employees, and for students as well, it probably be a subsidized pricing. But is it something that would be subsidized for individuals as well?
So I'm not sure subsidy would be the most appropriate term for like a broader program, but with the institutional program design and the requirement that an organization purchases for all employees or all of their constituents, the pricing would kind of even out, such that we assume that not everyone will be using transit all the time, even though an employer is purchasing it for everyone. So on average, that cost comes down from what an individual might need to pay for all of the transit.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody online on the video? Nobody? All right, well, thank you. Keep up the good work. Okay, so that brings us to public comments for non-agendized items. Melanie, do you have anyone signed up to speak? Anybody on the video that would like to speak? Okay, I do want to say one thing we missed earlier, and that is to congratulate you, Director Du, on your Senate Rules Committee confirmation. That's the word I'm looking for, and sounds like it was a very good experience. Thanks for representing WETA very well, and so excited that you're permanent fixture. So thank you for that. And with that, hearing no other public comment. Yay! Please call Jim. We missed him.